What the monster's gonna do. What the monster's gonna do.
Welcome to the edge of nowhere.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to this 33rd Larry Bird episode of the Monster Lore Tour Paranormal Deep Dives from the Edge of Nowhere podcast. I'm your host, Jeremy Carr, here along with my co-host and the Ahool to my guano, Mr. Matt Ozero, a.k.a. the Moz. How we doing today, Moz?
Wow. You took one for the team on that Ahool guano stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Should be the guano to my other guano, really, would be probably more accurate.
I'd make a joke, but I don't know if I want to swear this early in the episode.
I do have a complaint. I have a complaint already, though. 33 should be the Rolling Rock episode. Latrobe.
Oh, the Latrobe 33 with the lucky horseshoe and all that.
Yeah.
Well, 33 is forever and always Larry Bird.
Mm-hmm.
But they do both wear green and white.
Ooh, so we can combine them.
With the number 33 on them.
Oh, wow. So we can have Larry Bird drinking a Rolling Rock and just,
Absolutely. I'm down with that.
Right.
I think that makes a lot. Why didn't he ever do a Rolling Rock commercial with the green and white number 33?
Yeah. I don't know. I think it's a different state sport team.
I think you just discovered a missed opportunity in sports commercial history.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's too bad.
No.
Well, if Larry Bird's listening.
This Rolling Rock's for you.
Yeah, go do a Rolling Rock commercial, man. You're retired. Do a commercial, make some money. I think that would be really cool with the 33s, Anywho, although green bottled beer makes it skunky.
And fat bottom girls,
Okay, then. Starting with old business, I don't think we have any. I didn't find we actually edited our previous episode already. Yeah. And the Bridgewater solved.
It's just solved. There's nothing more to say. It's done.
You found it.
You're going to go there, and you're going to shout something. We're going to do some kind of ritual. We're going to just put this baby to rest.
Yell the shaman's name into the swamp and summon the giant black serpent.
You got to say it 3 times like Beetlejuice. So
I'm going to, like you said, try the different pronunciations. And
Oh, I know what we have, though. You did say right as we stopped the mic, you talked about Stewie Cthulhu.
Oh, yeah, I did say I'd do that today, didn't I? And I did look it up. Good call. Although I don't have it in front of me. We were talking about Stewie being the shapeshifter and all that.
The changeling.
The changeling. Your whole
and
thing
then
on
ultimately
that.
The black sachem of the Bridgewater Triangle.
I don't know how I missed it, especially since we were talking about Cthulhu's in there quite a bit as well. There's the episode where Stewie touches the nuclear waste. There's like a nuclear war or something. He touches the nuclear waste and he turns into an octopus. It's his head and an octopus body. Which is about as Cthulhu as you can get, right?
Oh, yeah. That's the Mountains of Madness right there.
Not only is he shapeshifting, he's shapeshifting into a Cthulhu.
Yeah. I think it's definitive at this point.
I think
we've got the same area. That's where Lovecraft Country, Rhode Island. Mm-hmm. We have the Bridgewater Triangle, the southern point, reaching to Quahog. Or thereabouts, the edge of that triangle, and I think we got our culprit.
Yeah.
But we do really solve the Bridgewater. Don't think that's only the cartoon version of that. So please go listen.
Yeah, the Stewie part is the ongoing cartoon theory that Moz is building. It's more of a philosophical side of things.
I don't know. Yeah, you can.
But
say that.
Before that, in that episode, you really dropped some good knowledge on us, man. That was great. So that's our old business. I'm really excited for this episode because we're finally going to get into the Ahool as it is a cousin of the Batsquatch. This is the Batsquatch episode. But we've had this Ahool guano theory segment run from the beginning, and it only took us 33 episodes to get to actually fully explaining it to everybody.
Yeah, the way we roll and rock.
But, you know, with our audience, I figure people can do their own research on stuff. They're smart like that. Before we really begin, take 1 second, please, if you could, and just hit some of those happy fun buttons on whatever platform you're on, the like, subscribe, maybe share it with a friend or two. And if you have a minute as we go here, maybe leave us a rating and review. That always helps a lot. But let's get into this. Today's episode begins with a story. Let us go now to Siberia, 1908, in the wilds of the wildest wilds of the world, along the shores of the Gobeli River, in midsummer, July 11th, 1908 to be precise. Here we find a man, a world-famous Russian explorer by the name of Vladimir Klavdiyevich Arsenyev.
How are we in Russia? I mean, I gave you a cryptid today. Jeremy's going to be running this, and I handed him a beastie that I said with love and blessings. Mm-hmm. How do we end up in Russia already? We're supposed to be in the Pacific Northwest.
We will find our way, Maz. This is actually Batsquatch and Friends.
Ooh,
and
good.
This whole winged bat, or bat-winged man, I should say, is not just limited to the Batsquatch himself.
Okay.
We're doing it MLT deep dive style,
Nice.
is what I'm saying.
Well done, sir. Well, I'll be the judge of that.
But to get into our story here is a little background on Mr. Arsenyev from Wikipedia. Arsenyev was born in St. Petersburg, Russian Empire. His father, born a serf, became the chief of the Moscow District Railway. After a military education, Arsenyev began his expeditions to the forests of the Far East. He lived in Vladivostok through the years of the Russian Civil War and was a commissar for ethnic minorities of the independent Far Eastern Republic. After the Far Eastern Republic was absorbed by Soviet Russia in 1922, Arsenyev refused to emigrate and stayed in Vladivostok. He became a famous explorer of the Far East who recounted his travels in a series of books. Along the Ussuri land in 1921 and Dersu Uzala in 1923, telling of his military journeys to the Ussuri Basin with Dersu Uzala, a native hunter from 1902 to 1907. He was the first to describe numerous species of Siberian flora and the lifestyles of native ethnic peoples. He was an anthropologist, basically, without technically being an anthropologist. So Vladimir Klavdiyevich Arsenyev is an adventurer of some repute. We are graced to be in his presence in such a barren place, as well as the presence of his dog and trusted companion, Alpha. As we catch up to Vladimir, he seems to be noticing something, some strange tracks along the path that look not quite right.
I saw the mark on the path that was very similar to a man's footprint. My dog Alpha bristled up, snarled, and then something rushed about nearby, trampling among the bushes. However, it didn't go away, but stopped nearby, standing stock still.
Vladimir locks eyes with the beast, and they stare at each other, both perfectly still, tension thick in the air as we watch the famous explorer eye to eye with this unknown beast. Vladimir decides on some action.
I stooped, picked up a stone, and threw it towards the unknown animal.
A large creature rustling in the tree line suddenly unfurls what look like bat wings. But these aren't just bat wings. They appear to have a near 50-foot wingspan. Alpha presses himself to his master. The creature, large as a man if not larger, black in the shadows, flaps its wings, causing a mighty stir, and ascends quickly, disappearing into the thick Siberian fog as it flies over the nearby Gobeli River. When Vladimir Klavdiyevich Arsenyev returns to the local village, he inquires about this huge winged beast. the hunters do have stories of what they call, translated, the man who could fly through the air. But this is not a long-standing legend. These stories are all recent in their lore, for this creature has only recently arrived in the Siberian wilderness. That is the earliest known, officially reported encounter with what might have been a Batsquatch, or otherwise known in Asia as the Ahool, or Orang Bati, or what Mesoamericans might call Camazotz. Whatever you might call them, they are large, primate, or possibly homonid creatures with huge bat-like wings that are capable of full-on, from a standing start, flight.
Like when you're on salvia.
Yeah. I can fly. They seem to come in somewhat varying forms in different regions, but they are overall a rather widespread phenomenon that seems to primarily occur in the area of, and this is my own theory as far as I know, in the area of the Ring of Fire that basically runs around the Pacific Ocean, with the notable exception of the second oldest potential Batsquatch sighting I found in my research. The following is an account I found on carlschuker.blogspot.com in an article from June 2014. The incident described occurred in England's Lake District in June of 1922 and was documented in Geoffrey Hodson's 1925 book, Fairies at Work and at Play, as follows. That book sounds like something you need on your shelf, Moss.
Yep.
This is how this encounter went. My first impression was of a huge, brilliant, crimson, bat-like thing which fixed a pair of burning eyes upon me. The form was not concentrated into the true human shape, but was somehow spread out like a bat, with a human face and eyes, and with wings outstretched over the mountainside. As soon as it felt itself to be observed, it flashed into its proper shape, as if to confront us, fixed its piercing eyes upon us, and then sank into the hillside and disappeared. When first seen, its aura must have covered several 100 feet of space, but in a later appearance, in which it again showed itself, the actual form was probably 10 to 12 feet high. Some very poetic language in there, but that's pretty intense encounter, it sounds like. But so I mentioned volcanoes in the Ring of Fire.
You did.
A hobby of mine that started in episode 2, the Gloucester sea serpent. Everyone knows it's slinky.
And then it's real. Now volcanoes are showing up around all these things.
Yeah, but that started my hobby of finding a connection between volcanic activity and large beastie sighting events.
So you're a Vulcan cryptozoologist. You're a Vulcan crypto-Vulcan.
Volcryptologist. A Volcryptologist.
I like it.
There you go. But let's look at these first two stories from that angle for a second. I did not find any volcanic activity to correspond with Vladimir Klavdiyevich Arsenyev's encounter timeline, but it does seem to have some sort of temporal connection to another explosive event, the Tunguska explosion.
Yeah, Siberia.
The largest asteroid impact in recorded history happened in Siberia.
That was Tesla, actually. But go ahead.
You ready?
Mm-hmm.
11 days before that story.
Wow.
11 days before Vladimir Klavdiyevich Arsenyev has an encounter with this large flying beast in the Siberian wilderness.
Dang.
Was the biggest explosion that wasn't made by man that we know about.
Right.
So maybe the asteroid disrupted the beast's habitat somehow. If it was living out in some, volcanic hole in the Siberian wilderness and all of a sudden the place blows up. Kind of similar to an eruption, And as for the 1922 sighting, it was nowhere near the Ring of Fire. It was up in England. It was the other side of the world. So that kind of eats into my theory a little bit. But I dug into it, and I did find some interesting events from the first half of 1922. It seems there was a general upsurge of magma in numerous places around the planet in the spring of 1922. So just like a month before that next sighting, in May 1922, the level of lava within the Halema Uma'u crater in Kilauea caldera, obviously in Hawaii, it swelled, and fountains from up to 20 different centers in the caldera created lava lakes, and it reached within 50 feet or 15 meters of the crater's rim. The magma was just swelling up. It wasn't erupting, but it was all just coming up. And in June of 1922, a lava dome began to form at the site of the Santa Maria volcano, which had been lying in respite for 20 years. This is in Guatemala. The new dome on the southwest side of Santa Maria was called Santiaguito and has been continuously active to this day, almost 100 years of constant activity. And there were a number of other volcanic events around the globe in the following months, including Mount Shishaldin in Alaska. The following is a description of the eruption from avo.alaska.edu. From Finch, 1934. In autumn of 1922, the Daly brothers of False Pass reported glowing material far down the north slope in mud flows bearing blocks of ice in Clinker Creek at Shishaldin volcano. The 1922 eruption of Shishaldin was picturesque, according to eyewitnesses. Great flames burst from the crater, and the top of the volcano was blown high into the air, about 200 feet of the summit disappearing. Lava poured down the canyons, melting the snow, and the black streams could be seen for miles. Lava continued to flow for 3 days, and heavy smoke was observed for more than a week. At one of the lighthouses on Unamak Pass, the flames lighted up the sky for days, appearing to, according to the keepers, in the form of a cross. There's a little something for you. But, it seems like around that time, there was a lot of volcanic, magmic kind of activity going on all over the world. So what do you think, Moz? Could a general rise in the magma level around the globe potentially spur...
Displace some of these.
Right, because we're going to get into how Batsquatch lives in volcanoes.
Right.
And so it seems to me there might be a real correlation there in a certain way.
Yeah.
Because if it's all coming up, that one that ended up in England was just like cruising around going, where do I find a hole that's not full of lava but is nice and warm still?
Yeah.
You know?
Yep. Well, you got to make the case, sir.
All right.
This is just setting the
Well, here we go
stage.
then, because that's just the beginning. Apparent Batsquatch sightings seem to be sparse and transient, with maybe a handful of sightings happening somewhere, and then nothing for either a very long time or maybe ever again. The apparent exception is the sightings in Java, Indonesia. There, it seems, the Ahools of our Ahool guano theory and Orang Batis are just regular residents, but they seem to be a different breed of these creatures than the ones seen in North America and Russia. Could there be a jungle dweller and a mountain dweller, two types of these beasts? That sort of question gets brought up here. But okay, let's get back on track and start breaking this down. Let's start with the seemingly most ancient of the bat-winged hominids, the Mayan deity Camazotz, who I think we've mentioned a time or two before.
Yep. Looks like Batman.
The Batman. There you go. Would you kindly read this passage from mythologyplanet.com for us, please, Moz?
Do you want me to do Christian Bale or Michael Keaton version of Bat Camazotz?
Man, I have a hard time deciding which one I like best, honestly. Let's get your Michael Keaton.
I don't agree with you.
No?
All you need to be Batman is a chin, and they picked a guy that doesn't have a chin. I'm doing Christian Bale.
That is not true, sir. That is not true, because there were guys with great chins who made terrible Batmans.
Okay, but
I'm not going to name names, but everybody knows who I'm talking about.
They need a great chin, and they need a great actor. You need those two things.
Uh-huh.
That puts Michael Keaton not on the list.
Those Michael Keaton Batmans were awesome, dude.
Yeah, I'm not arguing
You're out of your
with
mind.
you. I'm not arguing with you, but he needed a stunt chin. That's all I'm saying.
Oh, they needed to put a prosthetic chin on him.
Something like that. Yep.
Well, it was the 80s.
If you look back at the old
90s? When did that movie come out?
The 80s. Yeah.
It was the 80s?
I think so.
Anywho, so this is on Camazotz from mythologyplanet.com, please, Moss.
The story of Camazotz was first mentioned in 100 AD as part of a cult of a Zapotec tribe in Oaxaca, Mexico, though it's possible that the myth has been around for much longer, as there is evidence of the Zapotec people existing as far back as 700 BC. Camazotz also became an important figure with the Quiche people of Guatemala and is one of the most popular tales of Mesoamerican mythology in the region. Camazotz is a bat god that dwells in caves and is fiercely dangerous to anyone that comes across it. The appearance of Camazotz is terrifying, and in many depictions he is anthropomorphized with the head of a bat and the body of a man. For Mesoamerican mythology, Camazotz represents a number of things including death, nighttime, and sacrifice.
But Camazotz doesn't just come up in Mayan mythology and lore. It is still a relevant presence in the Mesoamerican zeitgeist. The following are two modern-day accounts of people who believe they had an encounter with Camazotz, the man-bodied bat god. It was a chilly morning a few hours after midnight on Friday, January 16, 2004. The young 20-something police officer Leonardo Samaniego Gallegos was patrolling the neighborhood of Valles de la Silla in the municipality of Guadalupe when he saw something big and black fall from a tall tree. The big black figure did not touch the ground, but seemed to hover over it. Samaniego turned on the patrol car's high beams, and before him in the short distance stood a humanoid with big black eyes, brownish skin, and what appeared to be black clothing or fur. According to the officer's report, upon having the car's lights shined upon it, the creature covered its eyes and became angry and then lunged at the car. It grabbed the patrol car and shook it violently. In a panic, Samaniego spun the car in circles to try to shake off whatever had gotten a hold of his car. He grabbed the police radio and desperately called for reinforcements. The creature then started to smash his windshield, at which point the young policeman shifted the car into reverse, gunned the engine, lost control of the vehicle, crashed it, and was knocked unconscious. When he came to, revived by paramedics, the creature was long gone. Samaniego was rushed to University Hospital, and in addition to being treated for his physical wounds, he was subjected to psychological and toxicological tests to determine whether he was under the influence when he had his supposed encounter. All the tests came up negative. The police department was left with a mangled car and the strange testimony of a very trusted officer.
Yeah, that's the big one that usually it's associated with Camazotz. That's pretty common.
That's the Canfield of the Camazotz stories.
That's the one. Yeah.
We'll get to the Canfield in a little bit. And Officer Gallegos seems to not be the only person to see a large humanoid winged creature in the area that day. The article continues. A resident of Monterrey and a member of the OVNI Club de Nuevo León, or in English, the UFO Club of Nuevo León, came forward with a video showing a strange black humanoid-looking being flying over the hills just outside the city. The station played the video on the air, and afterwards many reports came in about what would later be called La Bruja de Guadalupe.
The Witch of Guadalupe.
Thank you, Maz. 3 policemen from the municipality of Santa Catarina, another suburb of Monterrey, claimed to have seen the creature several times flying over the Sierra Las Mitras, the site of a natural wilderness preserve just north of town, which is known for its jagged peaks. Maybe it's living in the mountain.
Mm-hmm.
Another policeman named Gerardo Garza Carvajal of the same town of Santa Catarina claimed to see a creature standing 1.5 meters tall with dark feathers or fur and black claws in the town's cemetery. He thought it was a gigantic bird or bat, but it had the face of a human. In this sighting, Officer Garza said that soon after the creature appeared, it was joined by another one of the same size and type, Guess what, Maz? This time I did find some potentially connected volcanic activity. In this case, there was a volcanic eruption 6 days later in Guatemala, which is one of the main volcanic centers down that part of the world. But also, Mount St. Helens was swelling noticeably in preparation for its massive eruption just a few months later.
Dang.
That was just a few months before Mount St. Helens erupted. It seems the magma levels were rising, kind of like in 1922, in these volcanoes from which it will come to seem these literal Batmen come from. I said that really weird.
No, I get it. You're making a connection between magma across the world and them having to leave their bat caves.
Right. But could this La Bruja de Guadalupe be a displaced Camazotz or Batsquatch or whatever you might want to call it for the area?
Right.
And it is kind of, I never realized that one was so soon before the Mount St. Helens eruption, which we're going to get into right now. Oh, no, actually, we're going to be talking about that more in a little bit, as that is ground zero of the official Batsquatch legend.
Right.
But as I said, this is a Batsquatch in Friends episode, so we're going to do all the Friends first and save the headliner for last. Okay? So for now, let's continue with Camazotz in the 21st century. You want to bring us home on that with the next reading, Maz?
We see reports of the tall, dark, flying humanoid creature occur again in the year 2009 in a few small towns throughout Chihuahua, just west of the capital of the state of Chihuahua City, near the Sierras, in the town of La Junta. A young man was returning from his studies along a very infrequently traveled road. The date was March 6th, 2009. Came across something hunched over in the middle of the road. When the man's jeep got closer to the hunched over figure, and what he saw was similar to the sightings in Nuevo Leon just a few years before. It was a being standing upright, black, covered in fur, with a face similar to humans with wings. According to this eyewitness, the creature had 2 sets of wings and also red eyes. When it started to leap toward the jeep, the young man sped up his vehicle, and for 15 minutes the creature flew next to him, looking into the passenger window. This is the other, major account.
The thing there to me is 15 minutes. That's a long time to have something like that flying alongside you, harrying you, you know?
Yep.
That's a pretty crazy experience right there.
Yep.
It's a little weird. He said there's 2 sets of wings, but, in stressful situations like that, it's all a matter of perspective, and memory does weird things.
But that's also the thing, is so many things seem different. They don't, when I look for commonality, sometimes there isn't any. This one has the face of a human. This one's more the face of a primate. This one has 2 wings. This one has 4 wings.
Yeah, this one has black fur. This one has brown fur. This one has blue fur.
Yeah, it's an odd. But that is one of the ones that's been acted out, I think, on Monster Quest and some of the other, podcasts across. That's another common one.
But so we see that not only way back in the day, but even as recently as 2009, we have confirmed sightings of a creature that reminds people in Mexico of the old man-bat god Camazotz. And that isn't the most recent sighting amongst Camazotz's cousins from other continents, all of whom seem to dwell within the reaches of the infamous volcanic Ring of Fire. Camazotz is from the eastern part of the Ring of Fire, down in Mexico, Guatemala, Mexico, Central America kind of stuff. So now let's jump across to the west side of the Ring of Fire to meet a longtime friend of the podcast, the man-bat, the myth, the legend himself, the Ahool. And for being the namesake of the craziest concept for every subject we dive into, the Ahool guano theory of the week, Mad Cujos Ahool. Mad Cujos.
Damn boy!
So you're giving the Mad Cujos.
Mad Cujos
to the Ahool guano. You can't give a segment to another segment.
Just did.
It's also like a guano-y thing, and then there's a rabies
I'm
thing.
I'm not giving it to the segment. I'm giving it to the namesake of the segment.
Okay. Right. But it ends up being in this segment to a segment. But I get what you did.
Okay, anywho, let's get on with our visit to the Ahool's homeland. To get us started here, is an excerpt from cryptids.fandom.com. The Ahool, or the Athol, A-T-H-O-L, that's Athol, how would you pronounce it, is a winged cryptid. Some portrayed the creature as a giant bat, while others claim it is a flying primate. The name Ahool comes from its loud, distinct cry. Ahool! Ahool! The Ahool is said to live in the deepest parts of the jungles of Java and can be found across most of Indonesia. Subspecies can be found on the nearby island of New Guinea in the form of the ropen, a presumed cousin to the Ahool. The ropen has a long snout, large wings, and a long, thin crest.
Yeah, the ropen's more pterodactyl.
It's a little more lizardy. So I'm not going into the ropen in this one because it seems a little too more. It's more lizardy than homonid.
You don't want to ropen into this.
Yeah, that's a whole nother episode. The big flying lizards. We'll do that later. But the Ahool, though, has a distinct face that has features of both a chimpanzee's and a bat's. Large dark eyes, red-skinned wings, large claws on its forearms, and is covered in gray fur. It is said to have a wingspan of 18 to 28 feet, or about 5.5 to 8.5 meters. That is 3 to 4.5 times the size of the largest bat known to man, the flying fox. Although it mainly eats local fauna, such as large fish, it will opportunistically occasionally attack humans. Most likely because the creature is extremely territorial and an opportunist, meaning it will attack larger prey when the condition presents itself. One scientist theorized that the Ahool may be related to another cryptid, the Kongamato, this is another supposed type of flying lizard, though. I don't know why they keep comparing it to that. Albeit the Ahool's description describes more of a bat-like creature than a reptile-like one. It may be closer related to the Orang Bati. So it seems there may be some different breeds of these winged primates around the area of Indonesia, mostly living in the deep jungles or remote coastlines. They're said to be extremely territorial, but I do wonder about possible migrations under certain circumstances.
Like magma.
Yeah, like disruption of their territory a little bit, which would lead to things like a run of sightings of one of these creatures in, the wilds of Siberia or something. So far from their typically more tropical climates, but we will get more into that later. There aren't many written accounts of Ahool sightings. It exists primarily in the local folklore of the peoples inhabiting the jungles of Indonesia and Southeast Asia. This is due to their habitats being deep in the tropical jungles, where even the local tribes rarely go, and it is foreign explorers that we rely on for these written accounts for the most part. Suffice to say that actual proof in the form of direct witnesses is difficult to come by, but the following is a tale from the 1920s, so about the same time period of those earlier ones, recorded by one Dr. Ernest Bartels. You want to read this one for us, Moz?
The first reported encounter with the creature came from a man known as Dr. Ernest Bartels back in 1925. The doctor claimed that he was on the slope of the Salak Mountains, studying the many diverse forms of life. He witnessed a massive bat-like creature fly overhead. The creature was described by the doctor as being 28 feet in length from the tips of the wingspan and as having the face of a chimp. Reportings of the creature have been made in the modern day, with some reporting that the monster has attacked camps, villages, and hikers on expeditions.
And continuing in the story, we have this from cryptids.fandom.com.
In 1927, around 11:30 p.m., Dr. Ernest Bartels encountered the Ahool again. Bartels was laying in bed inside his thatched house close to the Cijangkul, Tidjenkol River in western Java. Listening to the sounds of the jungle, Bartels suddenly heard a very different sound coming from almost directly over his hut. This loud and clear cry seemed to utter, "Ahool! Ahool!"
Excuse me. And the Ahool appears to not be the only breed of winged primate in the Indonesian area. There is another more infamous cousin of the Ahool, and one area of Indonesia, it is known as Orang Bati, which I mentioned a couple of times. That translates to man with wings. Here is what Reddit user 2Sentence Horror has to say about the Orang Bati. The Orang Bati is a winged bat cryptid similar to its cousin the Ahool, but much more dangerous. Originating from the Indonesian island of Seram, Orang Bati is 5 feet tall, has reddish-orange skin, black leathery wings, and a long skinny tail. The Orang Bati has a more simian face than the more bat-like and more well-known Ahool. It also hunts and feeds in groups. Orang Bati has been recorded in written folklore since at least the 1500s, when the indigenous tribes of the Moluccans would insist to Christian missionaries of its existence. In verbal folklore, the Orang Bati has been around far longer, so this thing goes way back. The biggest difference between Orang Bati and the Ahool is that Orang Bati is much more aggressive than the usually territorial Ahool. In its home island of Seram, it is infamous for carrying out nighttime raids on villages in groups, carrying off children and young infants into the night.
That's very Wizard of Ozzy.
Yeah, and these same groups of Orang Bati are not adverse to attacking fully grown humans in the jungle, more often than not presumably killing them. The cry of the Orang Bati is a haunting, mournful wail, one that indicates it is on the prowl or has found prey. Where there is one Orang Bati, others are always nearby. Almost sounds like coyotes. Aggressive, violent, and opportunistic group hunters, the Orang Bati is a horrifying cryptid that will haunt your dreams if you encounter it and survive. As one Tyson Hughes, an English missionary in 1987, found out for himself midway through his 18-month contract to help the people of Seram develop more efficient farms. Tyson Hughes actually encountered the Orang Bati, and as a result of that encounter, decided to write the stories and folklore of the Moluccans related to this horrifying entity. So I wanted to follow that up with Tyson Hughes' encounter story, but even though every entry I could find on the interwebs about the Orang Bati mentions this encounter story, nowhere could I find it actually told.
Ooh, one of those lost to the fog of time thing.
Yeah, it's weird.
Do people comment like we don't have the original account? Have you seen people
I just
like
can't find it. Like, it's not like people say, "Oh yeah, he wrote it in this, he wrote it in this," but
can't find the original.
Find the actual thing. So I'm not sure what the deal is with that. If any of our listeners know where to find that Tyson Hughes' Orang Bati story and can forward it along to us or get us a link to it somewhere, or like let us know where to buy the book that it's in, or we would be most super appreciative of that. Get you some mad cujos on that or whatever, but for that or anything else you'd like to contact us about, you can always email us at monsterloretour@gmail.com. But as we see now, this bat-winged hominid creature, or the different versions thereof, because it does seem like they're a little different in every place, there's definitely variations, have been encountered in Siberia, Indonesia, and Mexico so far.
But it's all ring of fire. It's all ring of fire.
True, all except that one in England in 1922.
Yeah.
But that's seems to be a peak of activity, because like 1920s kept coming up, 1908 for the Siberia one.
Mm-hmm.
But the 1920s seems almost like it was the most active time for these guys, at least as far as I can tell. But let's move along here. Okay, now we're going to bring it back a little closer to home, at least for us, to the state of Washington in the U.S. for the headliner version of this genre of creature, the Batsquatch. There he is. This is where it's going to really start getting interesting. And it all starts, believe it or not, with a volcanic eruption. See, this is why I keep talking about it. And not just any volcanic eruption, but one of the most famous modern-era volcanic events, the eruption of Mount St. Helens. This from Wikipedia. Mount St. Helens is part of the Cascade Volcanic Arc, a segment of the Pacific Ring of Fire. The Mount St. Helens major eruption of May 18 1980 remains the deadliest and most economically destructive volcanic event in U.S. history. 57 people were killed, 200 homes, 47 bridges, 15 miles of railways, and 185 miles of highway were destroyed. A massive debris avalanche triggered by a magnitude 5.1 earthquake caused a lateral eruption that reduced the elevation of the mountain's summit from 9,677 feet to 8,363 feet, leaving a 1 mile wide horseshoe-shaped crater.
Back to Rolling Rock.
That's a big eruption.
Told you, 33.
Oh, there you go. The debris avalanche was 0.6 cubic miles in volume. The 1980 eruption disrupted terrestrial ecosystems near the volcano. By contrast, aquatic ecosystems in the area greatly benefited from the amounts of ash, allowing life to multiply rapidly. 6 years after the eruption, most lakes in the area had returned to their normal state. So that's interesting. The land suffers, but the water, benefits.
Yeah.
It was in the aftermath of the Mount St. Helens eruption that the first recorded sighting of the North American Batsquatch took place. Let's hear from PortlandGhosts.com about how it all went down. You want to read this for us, Mons?
The first sightings of the monster occurred post-St. Helens eruption. They appeared everywhere. Curious folks, rescuers, investigators, or anyone trampling around the blast zone were aware, from the word-of-mouth warnings, that something roamed the area. At night, during those few years after the eruption, only the brave and foolish would dare go out into the darkness and try their luck. For years, the Batsquatch was a Washington state legend, a creepy crawler folks would frighten their children with, a legend, a telltale folklore, and nothing more. The St. Helens eruption was slipping into the memory banks, the nation was recuperating, the region was getting back on its feet. Why dwell on the bad? And part of that bad was the Batsquatch.
It seems that a massive volcanic happening awoke some sort of unknown creature. Imagine that, Moz.
Yeah. Let's back to the Gilligan's Island with a spider.
Yeah,
it all
there you
comes
go.
back to that.
Art imitates life. But apparently the eruption disrupted the Batsquatch's habitat, much like everybody else's in the area, somewhere in the bowels of Mordor. Mount St. Helens. And they were forced out into the open to try to find a new sanctuary. After a few years of apparently regular sightings in the Mount St. Helens area, the Batsquatch seemed to have faded back into the shadows. That is until 1994. In the area of Mount Rainier, another of the large volcanic mountains in the American Northwest, the Batsquatch was seen again. This brings us to probably the most known of the Batsquatch encounter stories, the story of Brian Canfield and his backroads Batsquatch encounter in the area of Mount Rainier on April 18, 1994. Anyone who's into this subject definitely heard this one already, but for those who haven't, we're still going to tell it, so hang in there with us. Here is how the Tacoma News-Tribune newspaper described the encounter. The engine died and the dashboard lights felt dark. Although he hadn't applied his brakes, the pickup truck he was driving stopped suddenly, abruptly, square in the middle of the road, there between the edge of the forest and a scrubby, clear-cut field. His headlights cut a hole through the night. He was wondering what was wrong. Then he saw the feet descending. Bird feet. Claw feet. Then the legs, the torso, the chest, and the wings folded, attached to the back of broad shoulders. Then the head. That face. The creature, 9 feet tall, 30 feet away. Blue-tinted fur. Yellowish eyes. Tufted ears and sharp, straight teeth. With a dust-raising thud, it landed. Brian Canfield, 18, held tight to the steering wheel. He was alone on his way home, from Buckley to the isolated settlement of Camp 1 located in the Mount Rainier foothills above Lake Kapausen. At 9:30 p.m., a week ago Saturday night, quote, "It was standing there staring at me, like it was resting," Canfield says. "I was scared. It raised the hair on me. I didn't feel threatened. I just felt out of place." Its eyes were yellow and shaped like a piece of pie with pupils like a half moon. The mouth was pretty big, white teeth, no fangs. The face was like a wolf, he says. It's looking right at me in a deep stare, like right through me. It's standing perfectly still. It stood for several minutes. Then its fingers twitched and its wings began to unfold. Those wings were as wide as the road. It turned its head and looked back at me and started flapping its wings, Canfield says. Then slowly it rose, and so great was the turbulence the truck began to rock and sway. Slowly the creature flew off in the direction of Mount Rainier. A few minutes later the truck just started, Canfield says. I took off as fast as I could. It did happen. I'm willing to put my life on it, he says. I just have this picture in front of my head, the picture of it standing there. I can't get rid of it. It's just there. I kind of wish it didn't happen.
It's kind of reminiscent of our Yelp reviews.
How do you feel about listening to the Batsquatch episode of Monster Lore Tour? I kind of wish it didn't happen, but it's stuck in my head, man.
Yep, we have that effect.
Good God, Maz. Okay, but just a few weeks after Brian Canfield's horrifying encounter with the Batsquatch, another man by the name of Butch Whittaker reported another sighting of what seems to be the same or at least very similar creature in the area of Mount Rainier. Why don't you tell us this one, Maz?
According to Butch Whittaker, he had been low flying over the area in his private airplane, taking pictures of the mountain to help plan out a safe and efficient hiking path up the side of the area, when he noticed what he originally thought was a large bird. After focusing more closely on the creature and turning around, he noticed that the creature was not a bird but was estimated to have been the size of a man covered in fur with large outstretched bat-like wings. Believing that the creature was of supernatural significance, Butch Whittaker would begin taking a series of photos of the creature flying throughout the area before it suddenly disappeared in the tree line. Today, these pictures are nowhere to be found and are believed to be in the hands of a private collector.
Why do those stories always end that way?
It's the end of the Indiana Jones, and somewhere you see the smoking man kind of putting it in a file.
Right?
You know,
It's like every time someone actually manages to get good pictures in a situation like this of whatever it may be, UFOs or Batsquatches or anything in between, every once in a while you hear, yeah, I got some really good pictures. Where are they? With a private collector.
yeah. Or
Is that private collector the CIA, the NSA? Like, who are we talking about?
Yeah, they've given it to the Smithsonian. Things have disappeared. Of course, Scully Muggles of the world would say that's because it's garbage. But sadly, there's all these things of I shot a Thunderbird and then we buried it. We shot Hugzilla, we buried it. Some people do the right thing.
Yep.
Like the lady who found the chupacabra recently and, kind of kept it and sent away samples.
Yep.
Did the right thing. A lot of other people don't make the reference points, don't get the video to anyone meaningful, lose the original, don't take anything.
And the lengths to which those who hide these things will go to hide them. Mm-hmm. It always makes me think of the Bet Sphere.
Yes.
Which we covered back in the Alien Probe saga.
Yep.
But
the Rocky Mountain Bet Sphere
kills me. But anywho, now Mount Rainier is the closest big volcanic mountain to Mount St. Helens. Less than 100 miles away, actually. So if the Batsquatch were living in Mount St. Helens and the mountain exploded, destroying their chosen habitat, it would make sense that Mount Rainier would be the next place for them to try for a new homestead, right?
Yeah.
But it appears that they didn't take to Mount Rainier very well, because these are the only two recorded Batsquatch encounters in that area.
Is it the Portlandia-Seattle rivalry? Like, what's going on?
Well, I mean, who knows? I don't know what they're looking for in a house. Maybe not enough bathrooms, maybe not enough kitchen space.
Closet
I don't know.
space. It really comes down to closet space.
Yeah. Or maybe you need a opening that goes all the way down, but we'll get into that in my Ahool guano theory later.
Oh, yeah. You got to have a way to access stuff.
Yeah. But it wasn't until 1998, a few years later, in the area of Mount Shasta, that another large volcanic mountain some 500 miles south of Mount Rainier down in California, that the Batsquatch was once again encountered. The 1998 encounter story seems unfortunately super bunk, so I'm not going to give it too much attention. But to sum it up, apparently a log truck actually struck a large, strange-colored winged humanoid creature on a backcountry highway in the Mount Shasta area. This story seems like an internet trolling story to me. I mean, believe what you want, but to me, this one did not ring at all true.
I do remember this, and it was one guy's word, and his story was far from perfect.
Yeah, the details of it were like, what am I reading? Yeah. But
it's pretty sensational one.
Yes. But about a decade later, Mount Shasta became a hot spot for much more seemingly credible Batsquatch encounter stories, maybe lending a little bit of credence to that earlier story from 1998. I think it just took longer for him to get there, but the following is an account posted somewhere online. The book I found it in does not cite its source, so total research foul on their part, but I will cite the book that I got it out of. But this takes place in 2009 in the area of Mount Shasta. Me and my friend were hiking around Mount Shasta, and out of one of the crevices flew out this big creature. I mean, this thing was huge. It was as tall as a man, as stocky as Hulk Hogan, and had leathery wings. I believe the wingspan was at least 50 feet from one end to the other. I was holding up my camera but was paralyzed with fear as the thing flew by. It was flying or gliding fast. It seemed to have a head of a bat. I would think it had the head of a bat, or maybe more like a fox? The damn thing finally flew into a clump of trees and vanished. I heard you guys might be going back to Mount Shasta. If you do, please look out for this thing. If you see it, you will shit all over yourself, I kid you not.
That should be moved to the Ahool Guano.
I apologize for the language, but that was a quote.
Well, it could be moved to the Ahool Guano file.
Oh, we got some Ahool Guano coming, all right.
I don't doubt it.
But there's a potential Batsquatch there. But with the description of the head and face, could it have been an overgrown flying fox?
They seem to have these fox heads that we see, and the face seems to be the most random, because we have the pterodactyl version, we have the flying humanoids, we have the ape, and then we have the ones that look like fox or wolf. One of the encounters.
So I'm getting a little into the Scully Muggle side here, I know, but you have to consider that the flying fox is native to Southeast Asia, where the Orang Bati and the Ahool come from. So it would be mightily strange to spot one in California.
Mm-hmm. But it exists. It's something that exists. It's big. It's the biggest one we have.
But that's the thing. It would be a weird place for it, and it would be a very oversized one if that size range is at all close. Even if it's half the size of that, it's still way big.
Yeah. How do you get 6 feet to like 36 feet? There is
Right. So either way, if it's a Batsquatch or if it's an overgrown flying fox in California, this is a very unnerving and inexplicable type of encounter either way.
Right.
You know what I mean? Then in June of 2011, a man in the Mount Shasta area, again, was out walking his dog when he spotted a large flying creature that he described as being 9 feet tall with blue fur and red glowing eyes. That blue fur is the thing with the Batsquatch. That's the specific to the Batsquatch.
Yeah, that's so weird. We talked about blue.
They all have different color fur, different color coats. Like there's brown, there's black, there's gray, there's blue. Mm-hmm. So it does kind of seem like they're very regional in their appearance.
But we talked once before how uncommon blue was, and I think the
very uncommon. Yeah.
The Sholma in Russia, when the women turned into wolves, they were blue wolves. And that was one of the few we came across. This being, I guess, one of the other ones.
Yeah, of all the things weird about the Batsquatch, the blue fur might be the strangest.
It's also odd that that's kind of the Wizard of Ozzy. The monkeys had this bluish. I know the soldiers had the bluish, but everything had a kind of a bluish tint because it was dark in the Wizard of Oz.
Yeah. Where was I? Oh, we cut out in the middle of a sentence. Let me try that again. A man in Mount Shasta area was out walking his dog when he spotted a large flying creature that he described as being 9 feet tall with blue fur and red glowing eyes. He and his dog watched it soar past and fly out of sight. And again, in 2019, another Batsquatch sighting in the Mount Shasta area. A group of friends were out camping near a local swimming hole in the woods around Mount Shasta. As the friends were walking through the woods on their way to a midnight swim one night, something suddenly startled them. You want to tell us about this one, Moz?
It was around midnight when we decided to go to the lake's north shore for a swim. Because it was too hot to fall asleep, we were walking on the trail back to the lake. It was dark and felt humid. As we continued down the path, we passed through a grassy area, and there was a mist hanging over this area at about 3 or 4 feet off the ground. But just this one area, nowhere else. I remember my friend saying something about it because it seemed so unusual to her. A little further ahead, something crashed high up in the trees above us. We were both startled by the sound of branches splitting and breaking. Whatever it was made quite a bit of noise, like something scrambling to hide. It scared the hell out of both of us. When I turned around and looked up, I saw 2 large glowing yellow eyes looking down from high up in the tree. The rest of its form was hidden in the branches. It only looked down for a moment. It must have turned away because its shining eyes were gone a moment later. Then there was another crashing in the limbs, like something suddenly jumping or falling, breaking more branches, but nothing hit the ground. My friend wasn't looking up. When this happened, she was looking directly behind us, but she heard it and turned around. As the second crashing happened, the tree limbs high up shook, causing broken branches and limbs to fall, but nothing large like an animal hit the ground, only falling debris. It was probably about an hour later, after we went swimming on the north shore, that we saw something again. We were both sitting on the sand having a smoke, and from behind us we both heard a sound like huge wings flapping. We both turned around at the same time and saw this large black bat-like form soar directly over us, soaring at about the same height as the tallest trees. It crossed over the lake and then veered off towards the south, where it disappeared from view. The creature looked like a flying humanoid with bat-like wings, about the size of a tall man. It was far too big to be a kind of owl or bird, and we were both so freaked out that we didn't go back into the woods again that night. We just went back to the main campground adjacent to the lake and got in our car and drove home.
Smart.
Yeah. Well, the fog, the interesting part of this encounter is, and I've come across this one at some point,
mm-hmm.
the mysterious mist that showed up.
And I should mention, those last couple quotes are from a book I found to help me research all this. It is from Adam Leone. It's called UFO Sightings, Batsquatch Encounters. UFO Sightings, Batsquatch Encounters.
Yeah, the tie
into the UFO thing in a big way with that whole fogginess and whatnot. It's a very Portal Guardian sort of feel to it sometimes.
If you have a different, if there's 2 things. If you have a something under the ground coming up, you may have some kind of venting, some kind of mist coming from a volcanic kind of thing.
Yeah, the magma rising can definitely cause a fog.
Or if you have a portal and it's a different temperature on one side of the portal than the other, you may create some kind of mist as part of that.
Let's open this portal and make it rain, Maz.
Here we go.
Yeah.
Sounds good. Are we going back to Boston? Is that what's happening right now? I don't know.
Shipping up to Boston, Maz.
Is there a Boston Batsquatch?
Not as far as I know.
Nice.
No, there's
not in the Ring
There's
of Fire.
no volcanoes anywhere near there.
Yeah.
It's just a big slab of granite.
Yeah.
But anyway, back to it here. That last story shows that just a matter of a few years ago, really, these creatures are thought to have been active in the mountains of California. This is something happening in the world right now, pretty much, So, but we're gonna do another 2 stories here, and then we're going to get into our theory part so we can start expounding more on what we were just talking about. But another account I found, this one from Grassman58 YouTube channel. It doesn't give a date for the actual encounter, but
is that just Greg, really?
Grassman.
Just asking.
No, I don't know, but the guy actually had some. I didn't find Grassman58 on YouTube until I was researching this specifically, but actually pretty worth checking out for people into the whole squatching side of the paranormal. He actually had some cool stuff on there. But it didn't give a date for this story, but it seems to be a more recent sighting of a Batsquatch in the Selkirk Mountains, which, according to Wikipedia, are a mountain range spanning the northern portion of the Idaho Panhandle, eastern Washington, and southeastern British Columbia, which are part of a larger group of mountains, the Columbia Mountains. So this would be back up closer to Batsquatch's original territory, and it's been a while since they've been seen in California, so maybe the mountain has healed enough for them to move back into their original spot, or at least close to their original spot. What do you think about that, Moss?
Yeah, I mean, it's the same. You're still talking about the same Cascade Mountain-y kind of Northern California, Oregon, Washington.
Much closer to where they started.
But they're going back. It was like going down and then going back. Like, nope, this sucks.
Right.
And a lot of people will come to California and potentially, feel like they want to go back to Portlandia or go back to Seattle or keep going to Vancouver.
Yep. I always want to come back to Arizona, man.
Yeah, and that's not on that. We're not on the Ring of Fire.
But anywho, this is a paraphrasing of the story from Grassman 58. If you want to hear the whole thing direct from Marshall White, who's the man telling the story, check out the link in the show notes. But I'm going to give it to you in a nutshell here. So a man known as Marshall White, member of the Selkirk Range Sasquatch crew, went into a gas station one day and saw an acquaintance of his that he knew spent a lot of time out in the woods. So being a pro-level squatcher, Mr. White, of course, asked the guy if he's ever had any sort of Bigfooty sort of encounters in the wilds. Turns out the guy was reluctant to answer the question, knowing that Mr. White does interweb videos about Bigfoot and whatnot,
It's a series of tubes.
Yeah. But about a month later, Mr. White bumped into a mutual friend of his in the reluctant storyteller. When Mr. White recounts that interaction, this friend hits him with a story told to him directly by the reluctant storyteller. So for the sake of ease, we will heretofore be referring to the reluctant storyteller as Jimmy. Here's the story Jimmy told the mutual friend, paraphrased from Mr. White's telling. You want to give us the rest of this, Moss?
Jimmy and a friend were out camping in the woods when they spotted the flicker of a campfire in the distance. Curious, they decided to sneak over there and see if they be friend or foe. They snuck over, keeping low in the shadows as they neared the mystery campsite in case the occupant be foe, and ended up hidden behind a large log on the periphery of the campsite. Girding themselves for the task, Jimmy says they popped their heads up over the log to see who was in the campsite. What they saw in front of the fire was a notably large creature, somewhat humanoid, but with giant bat-like wings. As they peered over the log, one of them inadvertently snapped a stick underfoot. The beast by the fire jumped at the sound, quickly slapped its huge wings together over the fire, immediately extinguishing it, and flew off into the sky. I've never heard this one.
Isn't that wild? Yeah, and I think it was recently posted. It hasn't had time to make the rounds yet, I guess.
It's pretty dramatic.
But I'm really, I'm kind of blown away by the fire management skills of the Batsquatch in this story.
Only Ahool can prevent forest fires.
But when you think about it, because that's what I do for this podcast now. If the creature lives in a volcano, you think it would know about fire and how to use it, right?
Yep.
So it kind of makes sense. It started itself a campfire when it saw it was being witnessed. It slapped the fire out and took off.
Yeah, because there's no clapper inside the volcano. You have to do it yourself.
Yeah, but that's a wild story right there. I found that one. I'm like, Maz is gonna love that.
Yeah, well, you are correct. That one is definitely a new account.
All right, and I got one more encounter story for you before we slide into our theories and closing segments and all that. So this is a story from the What Lurks Beneath channel on YouTube.
Yeah.
Big fan of that one, actually. Yeah, that guy's really come a long way.
Yep.
His earliest stuff is all Batsquatch. Like his first few episodes is like a ton of Batsquatch.
Nice.
I'm gonna steal one bit of his Batsquatch stuff here. To hear it all and all the other Batsquatch accounts he has, check out the link in the show notes. I'll put up a couple of them actually to his different Batsquatch things. If you're into this spooky stuff already and haven't checked them out, you really should. What Lurks Beneath on YouTube. But let's get to the story. At around 8 or 9 p.m. on a warm August night, didn't give a year, the storyteller and his girlfriend were out in the woods shooting her new gun. As the sun was going down and the woods began filling with shadows, the darkness creeping in from all sides, the teller had a very menacing sensation of being watched. And here's how it went from there. Without alerting her, the girlfriend, I quickly scanned my surroundings when I saw this creepy face looking at us through the trees not too far away. I kind of froze up, and my eyes adjusted more to what I was looking at, and that's when I realized this face I was looking at wasn't just a face, but actually a full body, and that full body was larger than I could have ever conceived. My brain tried to rationalize what I was looking at, and apparently the face of a gorilla and the body of a bear come to mind. But this looked like a human that was 9 feet tall, covered in thick hair just like a bear, crouched in a tree with large bat wings behind it, glaring down at me and my girlfriend, shooting off. My girlfriend didn't know at the time, nor did I say anything to her, but after a couple of moments she started talking to me and I didn't fully register what she was saying because my eyes were fixated on whatever it was I was looking at. She walked over to me, looked over in the direction I was looking at, and she gasped when she saw it too. We were both stuck there, frozen, looking at this unmoving thing looking at us. In fact, it was so unmoving that we both began to talk amongst ourselves and question, were we really seeing something real? Then it jumped out of the trees and flew off into the sky in the opposite direction of where we were. We both stared at each other, mouths wide open, wanting to get out of there. And even though we had a brand new rifle in our hands, this thing I bet wouldn't have been too happy had we tried to take a shot at it. With how massive of an animal this was, I doubt we'd even get very far. In fact, this thing probably could have come down and killed us both. But to give you an accurate description of what we saw, the best I could make out in the lighting and distance was that it was kind of human-like. It had a very human nose. It had very sunken eyes and lips. It was covered in thick hair. What I made out originally to be bear hair, that same level of brown and thick. And then these wings folded up behind it that stuck out as my eyes adjusted. It was kind of crouched up in a weird fetal position on this very thick branch back in the trees. Then, once it moved, it didn't slowly sit up and spring. The entire thing shot up and jetted out of the trees into the sky, still being completely silent, not making any sound. Even the tree it ejected from didn't make a noise, and it disappeared out of sight so very fast. What we were looking at that day, I have no idea.
I do.
Was it a shaman, Moss?
Well, here's the thing. And first of all, this is another one I don't think I've ever heard. So cool that you dug up some groovy stuff. But it sounds like when you have a gorilla in a tree, it's obviously going to make a lot of sense. I mean, you can't even, most trees in this area, anything. Well, I mean, this area does have redwoods, so
well,
but and huge pines. But generally, these trees are going to be straining at the weight of a gorilla.
Oh yeah,
depending on where it lands, and you're going to hear, if nothing else. Now, the one story,
right? It's going to rustle the leaves or something,
Yeah, a few stories ago, something jets out of the tree and all this debris falls. That's what you would expect.
Oh yeah, right.
This one, nothing, and obviously that is more of what you would consider to be, something that may be your projection of something from within you out to that tree,
okay,
where you're seeing something leave the tree, but is it really a physical being? Doesn't
right.
sound like it. It also reminds me, when we do Owl Week, at the end of Owl decade, however long it'll be, mine, I couldn't hear anything, what was going on in the woods around me as far as, all I heard was the sound of these things surrounding, and I did not hear a leaf break. It was such a quiet forest and nothing on the ground, nothing in the trees moved. So for me, that lent it to be something other than
right.
creatures scurrying about.
Right.
And this has that same almost, with Cleland, kind of that screen memory moment. Although why there'd be a screen memory of Batsquatch, I don't even know, because that doesn't tie into some of the screen memory theories.
It has a bit of a portal-y sort of feel to it too. The fact that it moves like that, it's almost not fully attached to our space-time.
Yeah,
in a way.
Yeah, maybe you're looking through, like Primeval. You're looking through that door and you're seeing something that's really in another dimension.
Right. Yeah, I heard that when I pulled that story specifically from all this stuff and saved it for last because I knew you were going to get some good vibes off that one, Buzz. That was a good story. But so let's slide on into our theory section. I do have a few theories to present. Some that I picked up from my research and some of my own design.
Some he picked up from his research, others from his ass.
I do pull some stuff from there once in a while. The Ahool guano,
That's where flying monkeys come from, is my understanding.
Come right out of
That's
my
the
butt.
origin. Well, it's part of the whole volcanic lava tube theory that you're going for, it sounds like.
There you go. But before I get into that, do you have any thoughts on the nature, or maybe should I say the super nature of what we're talking about here, Moz? Do you want to drop a theory or two before I get into mine?
This is such a hodgepodge, and you did a nice job. I wouldn't have gone as far as the rope, and I guess as soon as you're getting into pterodactyl territory, how do you kind of confine it to, well, we're seeing things flying and we're seeing things, and I know you're being lured in by where volcanic activity is. So you have this hidden agenda, but at the same time, they're the same, but they're not. Again, and I know I already said this, humanoids, pterodactyls, face of chimp, face of fox, face of wolf, face of bat, they all seem similar, yet there's variations of a theme, but they don't seem like the same thing. Not to mention, physically, how does a Hulk Hogan was one of the... Yeah. Right? How do you get Hulk Hogan off the ground?
Yeah, that's a big sticking point for me. We're going to get more into that in the closing segments. But you know what it makes me think of with these variations of the same thing? Squirrels.
Moose and squirrel.
Where I grew up, it was just north of Boston. All the towns run one into the other. There's no empty space between the towns. But like North Reading had a different color squirrel than Reading.
Mm-hmm.
Like literally the next town right next door, the squirrels look totally different. And if you went a few more towns over, different squirrels. They change really fast. And there's very noticeable differences. The fur color stands out the most. When one's red, one's gray, one's black. But the ear shape will be different, and like the fluffiness of the tail will be different. But they're all squirrels.
But simian, and you're right, obviously variations of a similar species, but simian face to fox face. Yeah. It's a different, there's definitely a variation, or human face to bat face.
The creature we're talking about isn't actually any of those things.
Yeah.
So it's that perspective thing when people see it. How good of a look did they really get at it? What angle did they see it from? How was the lighting? How well did they really see the face?
It's like Gloucester, with everyone kind of trying to describe the same thing from a different...
And if it kind of looks like a fox and kind of looks like a monkey and kind of looks like a human all at the same time, then how do you get away from classifying it as one or the other of those things just because of the way the human mind works?
Right, and you can't really process what's happening. Everyone described that. I don't know what I'm looking at. So this is my brain trying to make the best of this thing that shouldn't be there. And it is going to play tricks on you. It's not going to be, it's dark, it's big, it's weird.
Yeah.
You're not going to have the same, but at the same time, none of these sound like the same creature in a way.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I hear you. Yeah. It's a weird one. It's a weird category of cryptid to get into. It really is.
Yeah. Well,
because there's some of it.
That's why I gave it to you. I didn't want to do it. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, it's like some of it actually, some of these stories, you don't want to doubt people who are so adamant that this stuff happened. And I've had weird stuff happen that other people aren't going to believe. So I don't try to, I, as much as I want to believe these stories for most of these people, like Brian Canfield believed that shit happened to him, man.
Yeah.
These people out in the woods that saw that thing, they believe that happened to them.
I'm not arguing with a good chunk
but I have a hard time believing that this thing can exist.
Oh, yeah, physically.
You know what I mean?
Physically.
So this is one that catches me in the middle. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. We're going to get into all that in our closing segments. Let's get into some theories I found from other sources, and then I'll get into my Ahool guano theory. But this is a couple of theories from the book I mentioned, Adam Leone's UFO sightings Batsquatch encounters. I got it on Kindle edition. So you can check that. I'm pretty sure it was free on Kindle, actually. It's not a huge book, but it's very concise in its purpose. But here is the first of the theories I pulled out of that I thought we might want to discuss. This says, many facets of the Batsquatch and other large bat-like humanoid creatures have strange connections with other modern-day recorded UFO sightings, including evidence of electromagnetic pulses. And as both UFO and the bat-like entities have the inexplicable ability to shut off vehicles while passing overhead, like in the Canfield story. Adjacent unidentifiable flying object craft sighted nearby or rumors of extraterrestrial involvement have been reported in the areas of their sightings for years, sometimes decades prior to encounters. It is for this reason that it is believed that the Batsquatch is evidence of either an extraterrestrial encounter or a species related to extraterrestrial intervention in some way. Yes, Moss.
Well, it reminds me of the transcranial stimulation we keep talking about. If something is shooting an electrical pulse towards someone, it is going to create a different kind of altered state and a different visual experience. You're basically being snapped into some altered state.
So it's like a Havana syndrome directed energy weapon kind of thing.
Right. And also like Havana syndrome, exactly.
Episode 11.
Yep.
That's one of my favorites, actually, is the Havana syndrome episode we did.
Yeah.
It was a different sort of episode for us.
Yeah. It was effective. That's why it was very different.
Yeah. My brain's never been the same.
Yeah. Well, it can only help our brains. Everyone else is in trouble, but we'll probably think better after a little frying.
So you're saying that the UFO is zapping our brains and making us see these big demons?
If it's
creatures.
associated with electromagnetic pulse, and we know poltergeist experiences, tied in, like more, if you have like high power lines going through your backyard, you're more likely to see it. These studies are showing as you hit different parts of the brain with this subcranial stimulation. So, and we're going to talk about it. Sadly, it's one of these things that comes up a lot, but it just is responsible, or it can recreate a lot of this doppelganger.
That's
or
interesting.
Or presence or monster.
That is an angle that never even occurred to me in my research for this. It's very good, Moss. It's actually a effect of the energy. Wow. That's pretty wild. All right. Well, then one more from the book from Adam Leone here. This reads, some cryptid researchers have theorized that the many isolated cryptid and monster encounters could be evidence of modern-day genetic alterations from alien craft. Similar to legends of Egyptian gods gene-splicing creatures into humanoid shape, the Batsquatch, Sasquatch, Sheepsquatch, Dogman, Goatman, Frogman, and Lizardman could be evidence of extraterrestrial gene-splicing of creatures into man-like forms. What do you think of that, Maz?
Not a fan.
Those UFOs are actually genetically manipulating these creatures into existence.
The Island of Dr. Moreau stuff, I'm not buying it as much, the whole, because, something slipping in and we're seeing something from a distance and it's going back. I don't know, primevally stuff maybe, but I've never bought into that genetic piece of it for many of what we're seeing, whether it's UFOs or mad scientists. I mean, it didn't work for Mr. Burns. Remember, he did all the flying monkeys and they all just plummeted. Back to the drawing board, Smithers.
Oh, no.
But I just don't like that. I mean, there's things people are seeing that can be accounted for through the mutiny kind of melonheady, strange creatures or UFO, aliens messing with, but I don't think that this is some type of a experiment with a bat and a monkey. Yeah, and
just because the capacity to be able to do that exists doesn't mean it would really even work, honestly. Well, because creating a creature like that is, putting the genes together is one thing, but for the creature to actually be viable and actually live, right? You know what I mean?
Yeah, dress like Hulk Hogan.
Yeah, I don't buy that one either.
Now, Rowdy Roddy Piper, I could believe,
All right, you want to get into the meat of it, though? Because I'm ready to do my Ahool guano theory of the week.
Let's do it.
Oh, no, here it comes. Quick, to the batshit signal.
That's Wolfman Puck, the meat of the week. Honestly,
we'll get to that.
You keep mixing segments up.
Don't you worry. This is the Ahool
You should
Guano.
marry segments more, I guess.
My Ahool Guano theory of the week.
Oh, I know it.
Hollow Earth theory.
Mm-hmm.
Volcanoes lead to
At
the
least
next.
you didn't say hollow moon theory.
Oh no, I already did that one. That was a couple
I'm just
episodes
saying this is adjacent, moon adjacent.
Moon. Yes, the Earth is moon adjacent. Thank you for the obvious, Maz.
I'm just saying I saw where you're going with this.
But anywho, Hollow Earth theory to explain the Batsquatch. You ready? Volcanoes lead to the next level down. These guys are flyers in the underneath, is how I see it. Because the air pressure down there, see, I have a hard time wrapping my brain around this giant thing that can just start flying from a standing position. But the air pressure down there would be a lot higher than up here on the surface, which would help with lift for winged creatures and allow for easier flying for a giant flying hominid like the Batsquatch. This also feeds into the theory that Bigfoots themselves may be hollow earth residents. For them, living in the cave and tunnel systems under the volcano is actually like living in the sky for the next level down. And I'm sure they can stay nice and warm if they find the caves next to the magma chambers, you know? But when these big eruptions go off, or these big earthquakes or explosions happen, it could collapse tunnels and caves and potentially cut the Batsquatch off from their access to the underneath. Then they are forced to come to the surface and search for a new way back down. See, I dropped that in a little early. The hole has to go deep enough for them to find their access to the full underneath.
I don't always guess what you're doing, but I kind of guess what you were doing.
Yeah, but this also plays into my theory of these creatures being connected to the Ring of Fire, as they could move around from volcano to volcano underneath the ground, unless the volcano they're perching in suddenly falls in on itself. Then they have to travel to the surface to find a new opening to the underneath. What do you think of that, Moss?
Well, it depends on how, if you just have caves that are deep. I happened to talk about this with a geologist recently because that's what I do.
Geologists are fun, man.
But he was saying the pressures are just not conducive. As soon as you start going down any significant amount, it's just not a thing anymore. I mean, if you see those people just in that crystal cave, what they have to do to just get down into that and survive and get out. Not saying these things like thermal vents could have different ways of processing food and oxygen and all kinds of niftiness to pressures at some point.
Yeah. It's like going down into the ocean. Like the pressure still builds as you go down towards the closer you get to the center of the planet, the higher the pressure. That's just how it is.
Yeah. And I'm not, but again, so many unknowns, we don't know. But we should get a geologist on here to explain why our Ahool guano is so Ahool guano-y.
That's not a bad idea.
Yeah, we can do that.
We do need to get a geologist on here.
We have a hydrologist friend and a geologist friend, so we can get them together and make mud. So that's like an old
mud
joke.
Pies. I like pie.
Maybe. There you go. I don't know.
I was hungry when this episode started. My brain is so set on food right now.
It's that burger day
we
talked about.
So that's my Ahool guano theory to try to explain the reality of Batsquatch. Do you have anything to add to the craziness of that?
Well, I do kind of always go with the portal guardian-y things because I'm doing this chakra alert system-y kind of thing. So I feel like this is something that seems more gargoyle-y, more warning-y, more...
Gargoyle?
Yeah. And I just feel like this is some type of a projection.
Wow, now that you say that, one of my favorite all-time cartoon shows, Gargoyles.
Mm-hmm.
The head gargoyle guy is a giant humanoid with bat wings and blue skin.
Yeah, there you go.
Oh my God, he's Batsquatch.
He's Batsquatch. Yeah,
I
solved it.
I just added to your cartoon theory, Moz. I don't even do that stuff. That's all you.
Yeah.
You need to add that to your cartoon theory now. You're going to have to write up a little dissertation on gargoyles and Batsquatch.
I'll go back and watch that cartoon. It sounds awesome.
It's a great show, actually. It ended far too soon.
Did you ever see the Cornell Wilde movie, The Gargoyles? That was a classic. For TV
I don't
movie,
think so.
That was really up there as far as...
TV movie?
It was a made-for-TV presentation, and it still stands the test of time.
I love when those straight-to-TV movies are actually good.
Yeah.
It's good. All right, well, let's get out of the crazy and get into our Sir Richard Scully Muggle Skeptics review.
You're full of crap, and that's the nicest thing that I can say.
You ready?
I am ready.
Just big bats.
Yeah.
That's the whole thing.
That's what you think.
Well,
that's
the
what
skeptics,
they think.
The
That's what they
skeptics
think.
are just going to be like, dude, it's just a big bat.
Well,
and, a 9-foot tall humanoid, I don't care if the wings are 50-foot wingspan, you can't just take off from a stand and start like that. Physics, dude. Physics.
I don't think Scully Muggles would even touch this one. I think they're going to say this is kids tripping, smoking that, Mr. Chief Wiggum.
They're just going to laugh at
kids
you.
all goofed up on goofballs.
They're all going to laugh at you.
Yeah, that was, the prom, right?
That's some old Adam Sandler right there.
No, that's old Stephen King. That's Carrie.
What, they're all going to laugh at you?
Yeah.
And Adam Sandler I'm having Adam Sandler reference in my head.
Well, it is Adam Sandler, I guess, doing Stephen King. You got to go for original sources. You always try to cheat.
I love the remakes. What can I say?
Oh, man. The original thing. Just saying.
It's odd because they say we're the same generation, but I swear we're not.
No, we are.
I swear we're not.
I am the beginning of Generation X, and you are the end of Generation X. Is that?
Oh, I am the end of Generation X, all right.
And I'm the beginning. We are that we are the between.
We're the Gen X
we're the
sandwich.
Monsters that are in between.
We are the bread of the Gen X sandwich.
Yeah, I'd go for that. So, but the mutton's really lean.
MLT. Mutton, lettuce, and tomato.
Yep.
Anywho, all right. The skeptics have way too much to go with in this. You can't even do it all.
Yeah.
You know what they're going to say,
Yeah,
right?
this one.
Everyone knows.
Yeah.
So let's jump into our Scully Mulder believability scale.
They feel your methods. Your theories are
Spooky? Do you think I'm spooky?
Wait, why am I Scully?
You want to go first?
I would say this is such a global phenomenon that there's something, between all the things we talk about, flying humanoids and Batsquatches and ropins and all this stuff, Thunderbirds. There's something going on that people are seeing, and I think we're going to do more episodes to kind of hone in on what this might be. As for the actual Batsquatch being a physical thing, I'm like at a 1,
Yeah.
I just am. And it doesn't mean some of these accounts, are not without meaning. I mean, the ones that were people were harried and chased and things that they interacted.
Right, because for this believability scale, does the Batsquatch actually physically exist?
Yeah.
I can go on all day with you on the theories of this thing being one of those liminal type things. It's not really there. You're seeing it, but it's not really there as far as our physical reality goes. As far as the physical actual existence of this thing, I'll be nice and give it a 3 just because I'm presenting and you already gave it a 1. I was going to give it a 2.
Okay.
I'll say 3 because then we average out to 2.
There you go.
And again, I don't want to discredit these people's stories, especially the ones that seem the more believable. But I can't believe that it's just a big winged monkey that can fly like that.
It fits in
physics.
with
I still believe in
the whole therianthropic thing we talk about with half man, half beast, portal guardian, image, archetype. Something may be happening more on a deeper level projected out. That has some deeper meaning. I mean, even Thoth is, he's one of those, Egyptian gods, and he has another manifestation that's, a monkey face. That's the only one I could think of that's kind of directly related to the portal guardian stuff. Is like he's normally an ibis-headed one. You combine an ibis-headed thing, human, and you combine a monkey human, you've got this Batsquatch.
There you go.
But portal guardian-y, archetypally thing that's happening for a reason as a part of my... And again, I'm still honing my whole chakra monster warning system.
This Batsquatch seems like something that should pop up on Skinwalker Ranch at some point. You know what I mean? Like that, if the sightings were all there, I'd be like, oh yeah, it's just coming through a portal. Like I would feel like I knew what was going on. The fact that it's everywhere, and in like some places they just kind of live there, and other places they're there for a couple of years and then they're gone forever. And it's hard to lock down.
But again, you got the scientific, equipment they've brought there, they're seeing these balls of light. They're seeing weird things occur. How someone standing there by themselves in the middle of the night perceives that could be very different. Could be meant to be very different depending on what it is.
Yeah, the camera's not necessarily going to see what you would see if you were
right. There. And it is this personal piece to it. The observe and the observer, the quantum.
It's the vibration. Yeah, the quantum vibrations that it puts in your brain, altering your perceptions and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, two Batsquatches pointing that Havana Syndrome gun at your brain. That's my Ahool guano.
That's a good Ahool guano. I want that on a T-shirt. I want Batsquatch holding a big directed energy weapon cannon of some kind.
Yeah. The 836-piece modulator. Yeah.
I did not expect Havana Syndrome to tie into Batsquatch. I love what we do here, Maz. This is why we need a podcast. Let's wrap this up with our Wolfman Puck's Cryptid Culinary Corner.
Your entree, sir. Smells good.
Okay, so this is an easy one. We're going to eat Batsquatch. Or I shouldn't say we're going to eat. We're going to serve Batsquatch to the cryptids who would like to partake of it. It's a very horrific thing we do here in Wolfman Pucks. But would you like to go first, Mons?
No, because I have to think about it while you're going.
Oh, you didn't prep anything for this?
Well,
you knew it was Batsquatch.
You seem to win by not being ready, so I'm just going to channel.
Oh, you're trying my approach.
Yeah, I'm back at
I'll go first. Yep. I enjoyed writing this one up. So I would make up a big feast of sizzling fajitas with all the trimmings. Make sure to marinate the onions and peppers for a couple days before cooking. Make sure to have a bunch of garlic cloves in there too. Cook the Batsquatch meat in little strips with a spicy lava sauce brushed on continuously throughout the cooking process. Because, lava.
Yeah, you got to tie in the volcano.
Get some nice oversized tortillas for wrapping it all in. I would serve it all buffet style with lots of rice, beans, guac, pico, chips, and salsa, and shredded cheese, and invite all my friends over for a Wizard of Oz themed feast. Costumes required for entry.
Wow.
I do this because I imagine watching the Cowardly Lion and the Scarecrow chow down on some flying monkey fajitas would be quite the spectacle indeed. Oh, and bring your little dog too. Excuse me. And for the beverage of choice, I would serve, you ready for this? Walking Shadows ESB Amber from Phantom Fox Beer Company.
There you go.
5.8% ABV.
Wow. Dang.
Phantom Fox Walking Shadow. You see what I did there?
Yeah. I think there is a Batsquatch beer out there, isn't there?
Yeah, that was too on
easy.
The nose. Too on the
too
nose.
Easy. Yeah. What I'm going to do is create one of those, volcanoes that you do in 8th grade. You make a volcano, but this one is going to be
one of those ones.
A functional also barbecue. And then we're gonna kind of pig roast this thing, and I'm gonna have like a luau. So we're gonna kind of have it on a spit. We're gonna swing it around. We're all gonna be wearing the Hawaiian leys.
9-foot tall thing. You're gonna need like a 12-foot spit.
Hawaii,
that's great. It's like cooking a whole cow.
And Hawaii is also a volcanic activity.
Oh yeah, right.
So the dead.
That is part of the Ring of Fire.
Batsquatch will feel at home at least roasting over the.
Nice. A beach luau Batsquatch roast.
Yeah. And I am going to serve it whatever that Batsquatch beer is. That's totally derivative. But I see it doesn't work for me. I have to plan ahead, kids. I tried to be him. I can't be him.
It's tough. It's tough.
Well, you really don't prepare. And then
I don't for yours at all. No.
Although I will argue I only gave you the last one because, Bridgewater Triangle, and it was the Boston accent that really... I would have won.
The accent won the last one. Yeah.
I
just won 2 in a row, didn't I? I totally just won that.
Yeah.
You were mailing it in. I won that. That's 2 in a row. That's pretty good.
But when you mail it in, like I said, it works somehow. So
yeah. I'm quick on my feet, man. I'm a philosopher and an English major. I'm just bullshit is my forte.
No, I think I can go toe to toe with you. Ahool guano, Scheissgeist kind of. But
yeah, but I mean, just making up something as random as a Wolfman Puck segment.
Yeah. All right. So you say
there's a certain skill there.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, not that
it's
a lot of people have it, but it's still something you got to develop.
I will consider it a challenge to be unprepared as possible moving forward.
Good job. On that note, we're going to wrap this up. Anything to add or subvert before we go, Moss?
No, I mean, more volcanic, activity to you.
Yeah. Thank you much. It was a very eruptive episode. But I hope everybody enjoyed that little dive into the magma pools of the Batsquatch realm. If you haven't yet, please take a quick second to hit those happy fun buttons on whatever platform you're on. Like, subscribe, maybe share with a friend. Give us a rating and review if you have a minute. That would be most appreciated, and we thank you very much. I'm going to leave it at that. Let's see you next Tuesday for, I don't even know what's next.
Same Batsquatch time.
Same Batsquatch channel.
Yeah.
Till then, have a good one, listener.
Monster Lore Tour Podcast.
And again,
Was that it? The sound of it leaving? Nice.
That's the sound your butt makes, man.
Yeah, nope.
Shut up!